As a Nerf content creator, there's something that's been bothering me for literal years now. Elite 2.0 is a freaking disaster. I have bought so many Elite 2.0 blasters that I've never done videos on because, quite frankly, what is there to talk about? So I figured why not use this chance to complain about Elite 2.0, point out all of its problems, have some vague hopes that either a new line will come replace it and it will be similar to the original Elite series that we all know and love, or it could be deleted off the planet for all I care. I'm sure it's making Hasbro a ton of money, and if you like these blasters, no harm done, but maybe you've just never actually used a NERF Elite blaster. So I'm gonna review every single blaster in the line. Even if I don't have it here, I have experience with that blaster. So buckle up, this is gonna be a long one. And before we get into that, I think it's time we have a little bowl of cereal. I have my milk. I have my magic bowl. Look at it, it's rubbery and it's got a weird rabbit at the bottom of it. And of course, I have my magic spoon. Script? What script? I don't need a script because this video is sponsored by Magic Spoon. And what makes Magic Spoon awesome? Grain-free, gluten-free, low carb, no sugar, high in protein, and all natural flavors. And they have all these amazing flavors like oatmeal cookie, honey graham, frosted, fruity, cinnamon, and my absolute favorite, maple waffle. And there's the first bite, and yes, he goes immediately for the second bite. And if you want to join me in a guilt-free cereal experience, go to magicspoon.com/Walcom and pick your own variety box and get one of the many delicious flavors delivered right to your door. But because you use that link or you use code Walcom at checkout, you can save yourself $5 off any order. Pro tip, they even have cereal bars. Unfortunately, I ate all of them because they were amazing, and here's a picture of them from the website. Trust me, they were banging. Oh my god, that's so good. You're the best, Magic Spoon. Starting off, I have to talk about the original NERF Elite line. This was the line that succeeded N-strike. In fact, it was NERF N-strike Elite, and it was a big deal because these blasters were very similar to older blasters, plus having new designs that are still relevant today a decade later, and it doubled and even sometimes tripled the performance of NERF darts overnight. You gotta I mean, obviously Nerf modding has been around for a long time, but Nerf modding really took off with N-strike when we got magazine-fed blasters and we got all these really cool designs. And while we always crave more power, the original Nerf N-strike designs left a lot to be wanted. So people were already modifying the N-strike designs, and then Elite came out, and it was basically like pre-modded blasters. And then you could mod the N-strike Elite blasters, and they became absolute monsters, and that kind of birthed the current state of the hobby. Nowadays, there's a lot of third-party options for you, and of course, Dart Zone has been absolutely killing it with their Max and Pro lines available at Target and Walmart in the US. There are, of course, other foam dart blaster companies that are completely compatible with most Nerf blasters and accessories, and they've existed for quite some time. These blasters have always kind of been just knockoff Nerf stuff that might have some good mod potential and you could justify purchasing them, and they were always much less expensive and a much better value than what Nerf was giving you, although the quality of the blaster was a little bit under what Nerf was offering. You see, Nerf skated by on its sheer quality. Thick plastic, really nice designs. And of course, they put out different ammo types and of course different lines like Zombie Strike, Rebel, and so forth that really cemented Nerf as the leading brand. But then their competitors started putting out blasters that were really good and really undercutting Nerf. And worse yet, they made foam darts that were completely compatible with Nerf blasters, and unfortunately for them, these darts started to become really good. Seriously, in 2022, there's absolutely no reason to ever use a NERF Elite dart. Most of the time, I don't even take them out of the package. So you got competitors that are upping their quality, upping their performance, upping their gimmicks, having better darts, and at lower price points than Hasbro. So what do? They made NERF Alpha Strike, and my goodness, NERF Alpha Strike was completely worthless. Some of you may like these blasters, and that's fine. They're meant to be a budget line for Nerf because they were losing shelf space to all of these other companies. The problem is, I think Nerf themselves realized that Alpha Strike was garbage. Terrible design, skeletonized as much as they could. They skimped out on screws. They skimped out on springs. Heck, they skimped out on O-rings on some of these blasters, and you could get like 3 terrible blasters for the low price of like $20. Here's one of the first problems that started with Nerf Alpha Strike: the over-reliance on the Nerf Smart Air Restrictor system. The Smart AR is a brilliant design from Nerf, but it does have its limitations. It's super fun for stock battles, and it is a very innovative feature where you can just load multiple darts in the front of your blaster and just keep firing, and you don't have to reload. It automatically knows what barrels have darts in them and what ones don't, and it's super smart. But if Nerf strayed away from the Smart AR to something like a revolver, a typical thing that Nerf has made very popular with things like the Maverick, well, they got their lunch eaten by all these other companies. I'm not saying that Nerf Alpha Strike didn't make Hasbro money, but I'm saying Nerf Alpha Strike is landfill. And there's another problem with this, is that Nerf Alpha Strike was either impossible, or if you could, very, very unworthy of being modded. Sure, you can spend $5 on a blaster and you might be able to put a spring upgrade in it, but what's the point when you could buy a Zuru blaster that's $6 and did a heck of a lot better, held more ammo, shot farther out of the box, could be modified into an absolute monster, and you don't have to worry about it turning into a plastic hand grenade because the little clips that held your blaster together with the Alpha Strike line blew apart with a heavy spring load and hurt you. So Alpha Strike was a wash, but we still had NERF Elite, and in early 2020, we got signs of NERF Elite 2.0, and these rumors came at the same time that Primetime Toys was going to put their Dart Zone Pro blaster on shelves at your local big box retailers. This was a catalyst for a lot of things because the Dart Zone Pro came out, and while it wasn't the best thing ever, it was the first time that a major dart blasting company had produced a hobby level blaster for the hobby enthusiasts, having a lot of the features that we deem standard. So we had rumors of these pro blasters that can hit 150 FPS and shot short darts showing up on store shelves, and then we had this mysterious NERF Elite 2.0, and our imaginations ran wild. And then summer of 2020 happened. I'm sure you remember it because it was one of the worst summers ever. The first blaster in the NERF Elite 2.0 line that I got my hands on was the Volt, which was the rebirth of the NERF Fire Strike. And oh boy, did this little simple blaster have some problems, and it was showing exactly where Elite 2.0 was headed. See, Elite 2.0 wasn't a sequel to NERF Elite. It was a downgrade. It was like a very close middle ground between Alpha Strike, you know, the thing that Hasbro cheaped out on to make money and compete with cheaper blaster brands, and NERF Elite, you know, the thing that made them pretty much the best company ever. The Volt was fine out of the box, but it was clipped together. Some were even glued together. It featured less screws. You couldn't really modify it like you could a Fire Strike, and really there was no reason to use a Volt over a Fire Strike, and the Fire Strike was still easily obtainable. But that was the first. There was a lot more in the Elite 2.0 line. The Trio was the successor to the Triad, featuring a 3-dart Smart AR system, and arguably, this is a better design than the original Triad. I never really liked the boxy, weird shape of the Triad all that much, and it honestly is one of the better Elite 2.0 blasters because you can actually take it apart and you can actually modify it if you want to. But we're running into this problem where the internals are clipped together and there's like no springs. They cheaped out. Even the catch spring on most of these blasters are plastic. The problem with plastic springs is that they eventually will break. There's no doubt about that. It's only a matter of time until a brand new Nerf blaster doesn't work anymore. I can go thrift older blasters, and most of the time they work completely fine. Heck, if they're broken, I can take them apart and fix them. That is not the case with NERF Elite 2.0. Not only have they done pretty much everything to make sure that it's as cheap as possible for Hasbro to reduce, thinner plastic, less screws, clipped together, pinned together, and yes, glued together, but they're pretty much designed eventually to fail. But the quality is nowhere near compared to what the Triad was. That thing, mwah, beautiful. The Elite 2.0 Commander was the successor of the Disruptor, or the Strong Arm. It's a 6-shot revolver, not a whole lot to get wrong there, and yes, it does feature slam fire, which is something that I'm a huge fan of. Something else was becoming apparent with this NERF Elite 2.0 line. they feature a lot of rails, a lot of tactical attachment points, and that was cool because they were compatible with your older NERF attachments, as well as whatever new ones would come out. But these things were just modular to the extreme. Tons of rails, stock attachment points, barrel attachment points on pretty much every blaster in the line, except for they barely released any accessories for this line. Most blasters didn't come with anything or just came with a random attachment. The Commander worked fine, but it didn't feature the swing out cylinder, which is something that I love about the Strong Arm, and the Disruptor is still hot and fresh. You can find it pretty much everywhere. And again, it's a NERF Elite 2.0 blaster. Thinner plastic, cheaper feeling in the hand, clipped, glued together, plastic spring. You get what I'm talking about. This is a problem, and there's still another problem. All these blasters I've talked about, I haven't mentioned performance. It's the exact same as all the blasters that came before it. So you're not even getting the surprise of these blasters hitting harder than the original NERF line. In fact, Hasbro is hitting 2/3 of the performance in terms of distance and power than what their competitors are off the shelf. So every single blaster, regardless if it's a little pistol, it may shoot a little bit worse, but it's gonna shoot the same as the biggest, most expensive blaster. They're all within about 5 to 10 FPS of each other. So buying a bigger blaster didn't give you more performance, and there were no surprises. At this point, you can look at any blaster on the shelf and know immediately how it's going to work and what it's going to do. Another problem, and remember, we're only a couple of blasters into this line, the darts. Yes, Hasbro is now doubling your darts, something they should have done originally, but Nerf darts were like selling razors to sell razor blades. You don't make your money off the razor, you make your money off the refill of the razor blade. They want you to buy those darts, and that's why they were so expensive for so few of them, and that's why they got absolutely destroyed by their competitors, especially Dart Zone, where you can buy 200 darts for $10 that were way more accurate than anything Nerf could offer. Even 75 official NERF Elite darts would cost you more than this. See this NERF Elite 2.0 Phoenix? It's not even unboxed. It's because there's not a whole lot to talk about here. It's supposed to be the evolution of the Strife, one of the most beloved blasters in the entirety of Nerf. And yet they cheaped out as much as possible with this thing. Now, the Phoenix was a little bit more expensive than the NERF Alpha Strike Flight, which was a bizarre blaster in the Alpha Strike line because it was a flywheeler that was as simple as it could be. And honestly, I dug the Flight. The Phoenix is pretty much the same thing, except for it's trying to be a Strife. Thin, creaky plastic. All of the internals are in one little section here, and you could literally rip the internals out of the blaster and they would still function, which is super cool, but definitely not something that Hasbro intended. But this makes the design of the Phoenix much more easier for them to make, and thus cheaper, and thus, why would you buy this if you had access to a Strife? In fact, Strifes were still on shelves and online when this blaster hit the scene, and you wanted to modify a Strife, you could make a Strife do anything, and it's one of the most moddable blasters out there. The Phoenix? Not so much. Was it bad? No, but it was the same thing in a worse package when the original is still available for sale. So what, they're gonna kill the original? There's supposed to be upgrades going on here. But unfortunately for Hasbro, they hit perfection pretty much right on the head with the Strife when it first came out, and the Phoenix is not perfection. So at this point, it's really kind of lame. Now, the Echo is a bizarre case because this is essentially the Retaliator reborn, but it features slam fire. It's basically the Elite 2.0 version of the Delta Trooper. It's got your stock, it's got your barrel, it's got the things you would expect from a Retaliator with none of the mod potential. And again, it's hitting the same performance values that you would get from anything else in the line. And again, it's full of plastic junk that's eventually going to break down. And when it breaks, of course, the stock attachment point is glued on it, so you're gonna have to break it and then try to fix that later. God, I hate Elite 2.0. And the funniest part about all of this is right now, as I'm filming this video, the NERF Elite 2.0 Echo CS10 is $29 on Amazon. The far superior in pretty much every single way with a ton of mod potential because the Retaliator was basically just a recon on steroids and it was the quintessential mag-fed Springer. There's so many mods for the Retaliator, it's ridiculous, is $31. This is years after the Echo. Why the heck would you ever buy the Echo unless you didn't know better? You remember the Surge Fire? most people didn't like it. It had a pretty fragile and clunky prime, tended to break itself. Slamfire didn't really work. In fact, most of the blaster didn't really work. It tended to skip shots pretty regularly, which was a huge bummer. Meet the Shockwave. It's the same thing. It's just the Elite 2.0 version. You get double your darts for $25 for 15 shots. With the Phoenix, it's magazine fed and it's compatible with all your old Nerf mags, so just use bigger mags or have multiple of them. With this thing, once you lock the drum in, it's never supposed to come out. So the 15 shots and reloading it is all you get. Now this one's actually bizarre because it was supposed to have Slamfire. Editing Walcom here. I was not expecting to get this far into the video and come up with an actual concrete proof of the Mandela effect. But there's listings on Amazon that say it has Slamfire, and there's other listings that are identical that don't have Slamfire. And it's really confusing. So is there two versions of this blaster? I have no idea. But at the end of the day, you're still spending $25 for what was the exact same thing with the exact same skipping problems that the original had. And this blaster could have been actually really cool if, you know, Elite 2.0 meant anything. But more importantly, rear loading slots. Stuff like this just needs rear loading slots, Hasbro. That's one of the cooler things about having big drum blasters. 15 darts is more than enough to get you through your day, and Slamfire is a cool thing to have on top of that, but having to tilt the blaster up and awkwardly reload stuff into it sucks. I'd rather keep my blaster pointed at the target and reload. Is it bad? No, but you can tell I never even opened mine because I don't care. There's nothing to talk about. It's okay. Oh yeah, and the Adventure Force Villainator was a thing, and it was 40 rounds, had Slamfire, and it was $5 cheaper, and featured better darts. Do I even need to talk about this one? Now, actually I do, because it's one of the more popular videos on my channel. I was excited for the Warden, and a little less excited when I got my hands on it, and very much hated it after two of mine broke during the review and I wasn't even trying. And I have hundreds of comments on that video telling me that I'm an idiot because theirs works perfectly fine and I just worked it too hard as somebody who literally does this for a living, and one of his favorite blasters was the rough cut 2x4 in the NERF N-strike Elite line. Well, newsflash, I actually sent my blaster back to Hasbro. They reached out via email and wanted me to mail it to them. And I'm sure it's fine now. Does it still break immediately? I doubt it. I'm sure they fixed the colossal issues. But the rough cut isn't exactly hard to get. In fact, Walmart had it in the Battle Camo line during the same time this blaster was out. And right now, if you wanted to buy one, it would cost you $26. So why would I want the worst one in the Warden? And infamously, this thing is so pinned together, you pretty much have to cut it to take it apart. And I wouldn't recommend even bothering because you can't really upgrade the rough cut because it's a smart AR system exclusively. But man, is it a cool blaster. 2 plunger tubes and a double stage trigger. I still love the blaster even though it has absolutely nothing to offer you in 2022 except for a really comfy grip. You gotta well, would you look at that? A blaster in Elite 2.0 that I actually thought was a decent value, and I absolutely love it. Would I still buy one years later? No, not really, unless it was super cheap. But the Turbine, it's thin, it's classy. The ergonomics on it for me are really good. The stock's a bit short, but I don't really care. And of course, this thing has an amazing silhouette and it's full auto, but it's basically just a slightly tuned up rapid strike. At $40, it wasn't the biggest ask in the entire hobby. I mean, that was $10 under most other full auto blasters, but full auto has come a long way. And the most heartbreaking thing about it is if you want to take this thing apart and mod it, which you can do very easily with most flywheel blasters, this one is glued together, which is a huge shame. But for $40, and it went on sale pretty often, and if you like this design and you like the ergonomics, and it's super sleek and nice. I liked it. I don't know if I'd recommend it, but I did like it. That was the first year of Elite 2.0, and those were all pretty middling blasters. They weren't terrible by any means, but they also weren't good. They weren't anything to be excited about, especially if you were a longtime fan. Basically, they were like worse versions of things you could practically still get your hands on, but now these are on store shelves and we removed the old ones. All of them are inferior in every single way, and there was no reason for this line to be called Elite 2.0 because it was just the same crap And these problems with this line were starting to mount, and it's very clear that this was made as a budget replacement for the quality Nerf used to hit. And 2021? Well, now it's really hard to tell if you're getting an Alpha Strike blaster or an Elite 2.0 blaster. It got really bad. Nerf is no stranger to the Jolt. In fact, the Jolt is one of my favorite blasters of all of Nerf. A tiny, compact, yet powerful for what it was. I mean, Nerf pretty much had everything hit the same performance standards back then, and they pretty much still hit the same performance standards. So that meant this thing was as powerful as the biggest of blasters. In fact, sometimes more powerful. The Jolt was excellent and super fun. This, while it looks interesting, I mean, it has a cool shell on it, it's just the freaking Stinger from the Alpha Strike line with a different clamshell over it. It's the exact same blaster. Hasbro figured out how to cheapen their cheapest blaster. You can't even take it apart. There's no screws. It's all glued together, and I hate it. But now everything was all about making loadout packs and making bundles like what Alpha Strike did, so you could pay $20 for 3 or 4 terrible blasters and spending $20 and getting one really good one. The NERF Elite 2.0 loadout pack was the first one, and this is where things get really bad. It came with an ace. Same blaster, just in a bigger box. The Quad Fire. Now this is a cool looking blaster, but as you can painfully see, it's just 2 pieces of plastic that are put together with some minor internals. It's an Alpha Strike blaster. In fact, there are multiple blasters in the Alpha Strike line that are identical to how this thing works. In fact, the plunger pull is exactly the same, but has a different shell. And this one has a tactical rail on the bottom of it. Honestly, I love how this one looks and feels. I really do. But it's the same blaster. But if you thought this was bad, again, you paid $20 for this set. The big boy is the worst. What the actual heck is this, Hasbro? I do not understand why this landfill exists. Oh, sure, it's a shotgun or a pump-action rifle or something like that, but as you can see, it's just 2 pieces of plastic. The grip is 2 pieces of plastic as well, and obviously there's some orange internal bits, but it's the same exact thing. How does this one work? You load 2 darts through this gap, you prime it, and you fire one of those darts. Doesn't feature slam fire, and it is way worse than the Quad Fire. Sure, this one's pump action. There's no point. It's just a slightly different way to prime it, and if it doesn't have magazine fed, there is no point to using this whatsoever. Could it look cool? Not with that massive gap in the front of it. This was awful, and you got those 3 for $20. This is the only cool thing in the box, and it's the same thing as a bunch of Alpha Strike blasters, and this is where things get really bad. Or does it? Well, there was another version of Elite 2.0 coming out this year called the Flip series. These are different blasters that still blazoned themselves with Elite 2.0, and their gimmick was flipping. Did you like smart ARs? Well, now you got more smart ARs than you know what to do with. The Flip 8 was the first blaster in the line, the cheapest at $20 for 8 shots. And it was essentially an 8-shot jolt. Pull the priming handle on the bottom, fire it, repeat a couple of times when the front barrels are out, you could pull the little sight thing on the top and it would flip the barrels around. So it was a rough cut, but you had to have an extra step. And it was less good in pretty much every way, but it did work, and that was the important thing. In fact, the rotation was really satisfying, and that could be a sale point if it wasn't for the blaster being so monstrously expensive. But, of course, there were other blasters in the line. Why not spend 42 United States ducats on the Flip 16? Yes, this is the Flip 16, and I should actually probably note that these blasters feel amazing. They are, quality-wise, some of the best blasters that Hasbro ever made, at least like when it comes to plastic quality and stuff like that. And the Flip 16, monstrous price tag for what is essentially a double Rough'em cut. But this one features this super cool spaz style stock that, yeah, it doesn't work at all. Of course it doesn't, it's Elite 2.0. The pump is supposed to rotate the barrels into place, and it works kinda, but you have to pump it It's garbage. This blaster didn't function. For $42, you would be extremely upset. Not only because you only got 16 shots for an absurd amount of money, but it barely works, which is a gigantic no-no when it comes to expensive toys. And this one was the bolt action, the same bolt action that Nerf calls bolt action, where it's just a rod that goes through the side of the plunge. It's the same thing as a pullback, the same thing as a pump action, just in this factor. No surprises. And of course, the performance is the exact same as every other blaster we've talked about today. Not expensive enough for you? Well, for nearly double the money, you can double your darts once again for the admittedly kinda cool looking and bizarre NERF Elite 2.0 Flip 32. This blaster is just insane. The pump action rotates the 32 darts at the front of it, so you get 16 per side. You flip it, you get another 16. And then the lever action's how you actually prime the blaster, and it just looks goofy. It is one of the biggest, most unwieldiest blasters that Hasbro has ever made, but they wanted over $70 for it. No, not in any world. For $72 should I only get 32 shots. Not worth it in the slightest. But again, the quality of the blaster is exceptionally high, and this one did flip almost reliably, perfectly even. It still was not a very good blaster, and with the Flip series, as soon as I was done reviewing them, they went into a box, and I don't think they were ever touched ever again. Yeah, this just seems to get worse. Now, I should point out that there are other blaster lines that Hasbro's making at the same time. You've got Ultra, you had Hyper come into the mix, you've got, of course, Rival. These are all okay blasters. Rival did have this kind of dance with being as cheap as possible with things like the Finisher, but they seem to have corrected that. These blasters, especially Ultra, are all the plastic quality and everything that you would expect from a Nerf dart blaster. I just don't understand why they completely gave up on what is their main line of blasters with NERF Elite. So let's jump into 2022. Do things get better? And the first blaster is, are you freaking kidding me, Hasbro? This is an $8 standalone blaster, and it's the Prospect in the Elite 2.0 Wild. It's so bad, because it's the same crap that you've gotten so many times with Alpha Strike, and you already got it in the form of the Quad Fire. And this is worse than the Quad Fire in every single demonstrable way. Even the scope on the top of it is just, it doesn't even have a reticle in it. It's completely useless. The grip is tiny and small, the performance is the exact same, and this is way cooler, and it has a tack rail. Why would you ever buy this? It's landfill. All the problems that are with the entirety of Elite 2.0 are present in this blaster. And then you get something that I'm divided on, because I know a lot of you like it, and honestly, it's not a bad blaster in any way. And that is the Trailblazer. When people saw this, they got really excited, and I kind of did too, because we were running right off the hype of the NERF Fortnite 6-shooter, a hammer shot derivative that I think is far above and beyond all of the other ones. And remember, in the NERF Elite Alpha Strike line, I actually liked the Hammer Storm. So you think I would like the Trailblazer, and to be fair, I'm middling on it. It's a hammer shot, hammer prime, one-handable, people love it, and it's got this cool silhouette that makes it look like a hand cannon from Destiny. But this grip, even for my small hands, this is way too small, and it's really out of proportion with the rest of the blaster, and it doesn't really fix the problem with the hammer just not being comfortable. Like, they could just slightly do the plastic on the hammer different, and it would be a far more comfortable blaster. Third parties have been doing it with metal hammers for a long time, but this holds 3 more darts than the original hammer shot did and 2 more than the 6-shooter. The plastic quality is garbage, as you would expect from Elite 2.0, and it's got this disgusting hole on the side of the blaster that you don't see inside the package. I don't like this blaster. It is moddable. In fact, as far as I know, it's basically identical to the hammer shot, but I would still say the 6-shooter is worth getting over this thing because that blaster is so comfortable. It's so good, and it takes the same mods as a hammer shot. But for $16, which kind of feels expensive, but that's basically what the hammer shot was anyway, you can't really do a whole lot worse if you can't get your hands on a hammer shot and you want that one-hand ability. And I mean, $32 for 2 of them, 8 shots, 16 darts, that's not terrible. How about the Eaglepoint? It's this... It's an 8-shot revolver. This is the problem. Like, this is actually okay, because it's, again, in that realm of where it's like, it's not an Alpha Strike blaster. It actually has like pretty good plastic, and you can actually disassemble it, and it came with 2 attachments with this little barrel and this scope that actually has a plastic lens in it and stuff. And honestly, it has slam fire. It works pretty okay. And it's kind of a nice, comfortable shell. I could see why somebody would like this. It's a bit expensive for what it is for 8 shots, but it's honestly not horrible. It's just not that exciting, and performance, again, is identical to what you would expect so far. What the heck is this, Hasbro? Why does this package exist? I think this is a Target exclusive, I'm not entirely sure, but they wanted $28 for this new, what is this? The Tactical Pack. Let's go through the blaster rundown. You've got an Ace. We already know what those are. You've got a Trio. We already know what that is. Both of those are in exclusive colors, but who cares? And then you get the Operator. This thing looks absolutely awesome, and I'm sure it's worth the bulk of the price for it's worse than the Technician in every way. It's the same blaster with the same 2-shot smart AR thing that they tried to cover up a little bit with this. It's the exact same thing, except for instead of pump action, you've got a thin, crazy, oh, why does this exist? The scope is molded to the blaster. The stock is molded to the blaster. It is super cheap. I am squeezing the shell right now with no force whatsoever. This is an Alpha Strike set that they're trying to pass off as Elite 2.0. This is garbage. I can't even do a video on it. This is why this video exists. This whole pack right here is why I'm doing this video, because there is no point to this existing. It is awful, and I feel so bad for people who buy it, because kids will have fun with basically anything, but they shouldn't have to pay this much money for something like this. The Loadout pack, which is nearly $10 cheaper, is better than this because it has the quad fire, and the quad fire or quad shot or whatever the heck it's called is 1 more shot than the Trio. This is never getting open. It's another Elite 2.0 blaster that I never want to open, because what's the point? So how do I feel about something like the Tetrad? This is a really interesting blaster. It's only $10, $10 or $11, and it's the same 4-shot smart AR, but it's got a little stock, pump action, it's svelte, it looks cool, it look amazing painted up, doesn't have slam fire. $10 is kind of in that price point where even if it's like a Jolt, if it's a good Jolt, I don't care. This thing just feels nice and it looks cool. And for $10, if you like this kind of thing, you wouldn't be that upset to have it. Is it worth picking up if you don't have one? No, but it exists. For $16 or $17, you can get your hands on the Ranger. This is a much nicer package than the Tetrad, but you're also paying a lot more. This is pretty expensive for what is a worse rough cut. This only has 5 shots. It has slam fire, and it has a typical pistol grip with a stock attachment point on it, and it looks so cool. The Ranger just looks amazing. But every single problem we've talked about applies to this blaster, essentially. So I'm not even gonna open it. I already know what it's gonna do out of the box. I know exactly the performance. I know exactly what it's gonna be. And that's a shame, because it could be really freaking awesome. It's just not. I mean, I couldn't get a whole video out of this. There's no way. And then out of nowhere, we got the Moto Blitz. This is cheaper than what the Turbine was. Granted, this is not full auto, but this is actually a really compelling blaster that even if you're a massive Nerf collector like I am, even if you think you have everything, this is worth buying 100% in my opinion. First of all, it's a bullpup like the Raven, but the Raven is actually pretty difficult to get your hands on. This one is on store shelves right now, and it's only like 38 bucks. In fact, I've seen them as low as 31. It's an amazing looking shell, but the awful thing about it is this part up here. It doesn't match the rest of the blaster in any way whatsoever, and that's a weird design decision, but it's obviously another blaster. And this is an air tank that fires 6 darts at once, and it fires them pretty well because it's an air tank. The scope is absolutely worthless, but the stock is comfortable enough, I would say. It could be about an inch or two longer. Not great, but it could be better. But the overall design, the way this all matches up, the way the blaster works, it's a really nice trigger pull. It's the exact same trigger system we got that was upgraded from the original Raven with the Halo assault rifle. So it's buttery smooth, it's really nice to use, it's a good price point, and you can fully mod this blaster. It is 100% moddable. You can take it apart. Everything has a spring like it should. Everything works fine. There are already flywheel cages for it that you can buy from like out of darts. And of course you can plug the pump on the air blaster and get some really good range out of that last ditch shotgun. Even the paddle mag release works so good. This is perfect. It's not even like super cheap feeling. This is what Elite 2.0 should be. Something new, something exciting that works well, that is worth buying at a decent price point. Hasbro could have charged 50, 60 bucks for this. That normally Hasbro would, but they didn't. Yeah, it's basically like the Mediator with all the attachments on it, but it's a bullpup, it's not an attachment, it's utilizing its space really well. This is a very good blaster, and next to maybe the Trailblazer, these are really the only 2 blasters in the entire line that are worth picking up at all. And that is heart-wrenching. So here I am, for the first time in my entire YouTube career, shooting the ending of this video after I've already edited everything else. Elite 2.0 was a betrayal to the NERF community. With how much good the NERF Elite line did to this hobby, to this community, to NERF as a whole, to foam dart blasters as a whole, why is Elite 2.0 an unmitigated disaster? You may like some of these blasters, and that is all well and good. But as a reviewer, I have to be objective in explaining why I don't like these things or why I don't feel they're worth it. Some of this can change in the future when the older blasters that I talk about are no longer obtainable, and it does change depending on where you are in the world. But of course, I have to speak from somebody who lives in the United States. But when there's really only 2 blasters in the entire line that I think are even remotely worth picking up, and one of them I personally don't even really like, there's a problem here. Because NERF Elite has so many. And this doesn't just stick with NERF Elite 2.0. In fact, a lot of NERF is the exact same way now. The Roblox blasters, the Minecraft blasters, the Fortnite blasters, all of these tie-in blasters and then some are just derivatives of things we pretty much already have. At least most of them are. There are ones that are doing something new, and there are ones that do reshells, but do it in a way that I still find myself feeling pretty good about at the end of the day. And this isn't a pin on any Hasbro employee or any Hasbro bean counter or any Hasbro lead in general. I know they have bosses and their bosses have bosses, and at the end of the day, they answer to investors, so really, that's probably the way things are gonna go. But I really sincerely wish that something would happen, and the Moto Blitz is a step in the right direction. If I can't expect any new performance increases, if I can't expect the dart blasters to function any differently than they already are, then at least we can get some gimmicks, at least we can get some cool stuff made, at least we can get attachments, at least we can get little niches filled here and there. Why not go back to the drawing board and bring out some stuff that you should have brought out a long time ago, like a double-barreled sledge fire? How about something like this that has a shell strike on the bottom of it? How about a blaster that incorporates the technology that you made with the Regulator, the Infinus, and the Chrono Barrel and put it into one blaster with a rechargeable battery? Bring back body-mounted things like the Cyber Strike line. Bring back N-Force. There's still so much I want to see out of NERF, and honestly, at the top of the list is a double-barreled sledge fire. And I mean literally 2 sledge fires glued together that break in half, that load 2 shells, and it has a double-stage trigger. It's not like that's impossible for Hasbro to make, they just never did it for some reason. And that's the kind of stuff I hope to see from NERF in the future. This was a hard video to make, but I make it out of love because I'm kind of a huge fan. And I wanted to throw this in at the end of the video because I know it's going to come up, and it's like, Walcom, why do you care so much about kids' toys? And I would make the argument that NERF transcends a child product. For a lot of people, shooting things is cool, and shooting things safely is even cooler. Much like how Lego was, you know, toy bricks for kids, but now it is so far beyond that. I'm basically asking Hasbro to put a little bit more effort into what is my favorite toy on the planet. There has to be a way that you can make sufficient amounts of money and make a good quality product, because it really doesn't seem like we can ever have both. But that's all I've got for you. I have edited this video for an insane amount of time, and who knows how it's going to perform in the algorithm, but I did my absolute best, so even if it does perform poorly and I'm disappointed by that, at least I can know hopefully the community out there does enjoy it. And if you did, like the video, maybe share it with a couple of people. You have no idea how much those little things help this channel grow. But I'm Walcom S7. Thank you so very freaking much for watching this video. And if you got to the end of it, I would guarantee you probably like what I do here. And I would like to make more videos like this one. So please let me know down in that comment section and like, subscribe, comment, ring the bell, do all that algorithmic garbage to help the channel grow so you can help our hobby grow. And of course, I hope to see you in an entirely different video. And I keep saying that, but sometimes those videos wind up like this one. Freaking Moto Blitz, man, you were just so cool.